Okay, our today's topic is plastids. Last time we discussed about ribosomes. Now today we are going to discuss about plastids. You know these plastids, they are only found in plants. Only found in plants and some protists. And some protists. For example, euglena. Plastids, they are only found in plants and they are also found in some protists, for example, euglena. These plastids, they are absent in. They are absent in Monera. They are absent in fungi and animalia. So in kingdom Monera, fungi and animalia, they are absent. So they are only found in plants and some protists. These plastids, they are of two main types. Plastids are of two main types. Chromoplasts or chromoplasts and leucoplasts. Let's make it simple. Plastids, they are of two types, chromoplasts and leucoplasts. Chromoplasts, they are colored plastids. They are colored plastids. Chromoplasts are colored. Chroma means pigment and plastid. They are colored plastids. Leucoplasts, they are colorless. They are colorless plastids. So where we find these chromoplasts? These chromoplasts, they are found in exposed parts of plant. Those parts of plants which are exposed to direct sunlight. Those parts of plants which are directly exposed to sunlight. There we find chromoplasts. For example, in case of leaves, they are present in leaves, they are present in flowers, they are present in fruits, they may be present in stems as well. So those parts of the plants which are directly exposed to sunlight, they possess chromoplasts in them. For example, leaves. Leaves are green colored. They have got a colored plastid, chloroplast, right? Flowers, they also have got chromoplasts. Fruits, they also have got chromoplasts in them, and in stems, we may find chromoplasts. Where we find leucoplasts, they are found in only those parts which are not exposed to sunlight. Exposed to sunlight. So chromoplasts are found in those parts of the plants which are directly exposed to sunlight. Leucoplasts are generally found in those parts of the plants which are not directly exposed to sunlight, right? Right. Okay. Now, what is the function of these chromoplasts and leucoplasts? These chromoplasts and leucoplasts, they are involved in different functions. For example, if we talk of chromoplasts, they are involved in photosynthesis. Chromoplasts are involved in photosynthesis. They are involved in pollination. They are involved in dispersal of plants. Chromoplasts, they are involved in photosynthesis. For example, chloroplasts, they possess green pigment, and in chloroplasts, photosynthesis occurs. Similarly, they are involved in pollination. You know, flowers, they are brightly colored. So those brightly colored flowers, they are meant for attraction of the insects. They are meant for attraction of the insects. They attract insects towards themselves. And when insects sit on those flowers, their pollen grains stick to their legs. And when one insect migrates from one flower to another flower, the insect carries the pollen grains to another flower where it may pollinate that next flower, right? So in this way, they are involved in pollination because they attract insects due to their bright colors. They are also meant for dispersal of plants. Plants develop brightly colored fruits. Those bright colored fruits, they attract animals towards themselves. When animals eat those fruits, in the fruits they possess seeds. Seeds are not usually digested. When animals excrete their excreta in their fecal matter, the seeds of plants they are undigested. When the excreta is dropped somewhere, along with that excreta, the seed may be also dropped. For example, there are birds. They eat mulberries in Sopor. After eating mulberries in Sopor, they migrate to Hadipora. And in Hadipora, they drop their excreta. They make their droppings. In their droppings, there are seeds of undigested seeds of mulberry. So when these seeds fall on, so when those seeds drop there, those seeds after dropping, they may get in the soil, and new mulberry plants may develop in Hadipora, right? So in this way, the fruits of these chromoplasts, sorry, the fruits of these plants, they are brightly colored. They attract animals. Animals eat their fruits, and then in the fruits there are seeds. Those seeds remain undigested. When the animal moves from one place to another place, at another place, animal drops its excreta. Along with the excreta, it also drops the seeds. Those seeds may get into the soil, and they may develop their new plants. So they are involved in photosynthesis, they are involved in pollination, and they are involved in dispersal of plants, right? This is the main function of chromoplasts. What is the function of leucoplasts? These leucoplasts, they are mainly concerned with storage of material. They are storage plastids. They are storage plastids. They store materials. For example, there is a plastid known as amyloplast. Amyloplasts, they store carbohydrates or they store starch. Amyloplasts, they store carbohydrates or starch. Then there is another leucoplast that is known as proteinoplast. Proteinoplast, or we also call it as eluranoplast. Eluranoplast. They store proteins. They store proteins. Similarly, we have got eleoplasts. Eleoplasts, or sometimes they are also known as oleosomes. Oleosomes. They store fats. So leucoplasts, they are storage plasts. They are not meant for photosynthesis, pollination, or dispersal. Leucoplasts, they are storage plastids. They store starches. A leucoplast which is involved in storage of starch, that leucoplast is known as amyloplast. Leucoplast which stores proteins, that is known as proteinoplast, or we call that as eluranoplast. Some leucoplasts, they are involved in storage of fat. We call those leucoplasts as eleoplasts or oleosomes, right? So these leucoplasts, they are storage plastids, and they are involved in storage of starch, proteins, and fats. Accordingly, they are known as amyloplasts, proteinoplasts, or eleoplasts, right? While as chromoplasts, they are concerned with photosynthesis, pollination, and dispersal. These chromoplasts, they are of different types. Chromoplasts of green plants. In green plants, we have got chromoplasts known as chloroplasts. Known as chloroplasts. So chloroplasts, they are basically chromoplasts. They are found in green plants and they contain a pigment known as chlorophyll in them. And by the help of this chlorophyll, they are involved in photosynthesis. They carry out photosynthesis, right? Similarly, in some algae, there are phaeoplasts. Phaeoplasts. These phaeoplasts, they are found in brown algae. Brown algae. And they contain pigments. fucoxanthins and xanthophylls in them. They are involved in photosynthesis. Similarly, in red algae, we have got another type of plastids. In red algae, there are rhodoplasts. They contain a pigment phycoerythrin. In them. They are also involved in photosynthesis. So some of the chromoplasts, like chloroplasts, they are found in all green plants. They contain chlorophyll pigment in them. They are involved in photosynthesis. Similarly, we have got brown algae. In brown algae, we have got phaeoplasts. Those phaeoplasts, they contain pigments, fucoxanthins and xanthophylls. They are also involved in photosynthesis. In red algae, we have got rhodoplasts. These rhodoplasts, they contain a pigment phycoerythrin. This is also involved in photosynthesis, right? So these all plastids, which are chromoplasts, they are all involved in photosynthesis, right? The non-green plastids of brown algae and red algae, they are also known as chromatophores. The non-green photosynthetic plastids of brown algae and red algae, they are also known as chromatophores. Similarly, we also call bacterial thylakoids. In bacteria, there are thylakoids, which are also known as photosynthetic membranes. Those bacterial thylakoids, they are also sometimes referred to as chromatophores. So non-green plastids of algae, they are known as chromatophores, and bacterial photosynthetic membranes, they are also sometimes known as chromatophores. So these are different types of plastids. Are these plastids interconvertible? Yes, plastids are interconvertible. Sometimes a leucoplast may change into a chromoplast. For example, you may have seen in carrot. Carrot has got an orange color, right? That orange color is because of deposition of carotenoid pigments in the leucoplasts of the carrot. Carrots are found underground, right? Carrots are lying underground. So they are not directly exposed to the sunlight. But they first make storage plastids. Then their storage plastids are deposited with carotenoid pigments and they assume the orange color, right? So leucoplast may change into a chromoplast. Similarly, a chloroplast may also change, may develop some other pigment. For example, when we see chilies or when we see fruits, in the beginning they are green in color. When we see tomatoes, chilies, in the beginning they are green in color. As they ripen, their green color is replaced by the orange color or the red color. Their green color is replaced by the red color. So these chilies and tomatoes, they develop another pigment that is known as lycopene pigment, which masks the effect of chlorophyll, the green pigment. Chlorophyll starts vanishing and it is being replaced by another pigment, lycopene pigment, which imparts red color to the chilies and tomatoes, right? So in this way, these plastids, they may be interconvertible. Chloroplasts may be converted into chromoplasts. Leucoplasts may be converted into chromoplasts. So they are interconvertible, right? So that is about the classification of these plastids. Now we are here concerned mainly with the chloroplasts. We will see the structure of chloroplasts. The term plastid, it was coined by Haeckel in 1866. Term plastid was coined by Haeckel in 1866. And chloroplasts, were named by Schimper in 1883. First time the chloroplast was seen by Anton von Leeuwenhoek in 1670. Chloroplast was first seen by Anton von Leeuwenhoek in 1670. However, the term chloroplast was coined by Schimper in 1883, and the term plastid was coined by Haeckel in 1866. Right now, the plastid which we are going to discuss, that is chloroplast. We are mainly concerned with the chloroplasts. These chloroplasts, as you know, they are most commonly known as kitchens of the cell. Kitchens of the cell. As we call the Golgi bodies as post office of the cell. Similarly, we call chloroplasts as kitchen of the cell. Why we call them as kitchens of the cell? Because these are the cell organelles which synthesize the food. We synthesize the food. That is why they are known as kitchens of the cell. Now, first we will have a look at the shape of these chloroplasts. The shape of chloroplasts, it varies. Shape of chloroplasts varies. Chloroplasts are cup-like. They are cup-like in chlamydomonas. In chlamydomonas. Chloroplasts are cup-like in chlamydomonas. They are ribbon-like. They are ribbon-like in Spirogyra. Spirogyra. However, in higher plants, they may be spherical, they may be oval, they may be discoidal, or boat-shaped. So the shape of chloroplasts varies. In chlamydomonas, they are cup-like. In chlamydomonas, they are cup-like. In Spirogyra, they are ribbon-like. And in higher plants, they may be spherical, they may be oval, they may be discoidal, or they may be boat-shaped. So their shape varies. What about the size of chloroplasts? The average size of chloroplast is 4 to 6 microns. Average size of chloroplast is 4 to 6 microns. So that is about their shape and size. Now, what about the number of chloroplasts per cell? How many chloroplasts are present in per cell or in a cell? Number per cell. There may be some 10 to 100 chloroplasts per parenchymal cell. Per parenchymal cell. So the number varies in between 10 to 100. In a typical parenchymal cell, there may be some 10 to 100 chloroplasts, right? So that is about their shape, size, and number. Now we will have a look at their structure. How these chloroplasts look like. These chloroplasts, they are membrane, double membrane bound organelles. Chloroplasts are double membrane bound organelles. Like mitochondria, like nucleus, they are double membrane bound organelles. This is their outer membrane. This is their inner membrane. So they are double membrane bound organelles. This is the outer membrane. This is the inner membrane. In between these two membranes, there is a space. There is an empty space. This is known as periplastidial space. Periplastidial space. So chloroplasts, like mitochondria, like nucleus, they are double membrane bound organelles. They are externally covered by a membrane known as outer membrane. Then internally they have another membrane known as inner membrane. In between these two membranes, there is a space. That space is known as periplastidial space, or we call it as outer chamber. Then inner to this inner membrane, there is a fluid-filled space. This fluid of the chloroplast, this is known as its matrix. This is the matrix of chloroplast. In this matrix of chloroplast, we find some sac-like structures stacked upon each other. So we find stacks of sac-like structures. These stacks of sac-like structures, they are known as the grana. These grana, they are interconnected by membranes. Are you listening to me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. I'm being disturbed by phone calls. Receiving some phone calls. Okay. So in the matrix of this chloroplast, we find some stacks of sac-like structures. These stacks of sac-like structures, they are known as grana. This is singular granum. Singular is granum. Each granum is formed of these sac-like structures. These sac-like structures, they are known as thylakoids. They are known as thylakoids. They are known as thylakoids. How many thylakoids make one granum? Some 20 to 50 thylakoids or more. When they are stacked upon each other, they form one granum. 20 to 50 sac-like structures are stacked upon each other and they form one stack known as a granum. How many grana are present per chloroplast? In a chloroplast, there may be some 40 to 100 grana per chloroplast. In a single chloroplast, there may be some 40 to 100 grana. And how many chloroplasts are present per parenchymal cell? In a typical parenchymal cell, there may be 10 to 100 chloroplasts per cell, right? So in the matrix of chloroplast, we find some stacks of sac-like structures. These stacks of sac-like structures, they are known as grana. Singular is granum. Each granum is formed of some 20 to 50 sac-like structures known as thylakoids. So this is one thylakoid, this is another thylakoid, another thylakoid, another thylakoid, another thylakoid. Many thylakoids. How many thylakoids? Some 20 to 50 or sometimes more. They stack upon each other and they form one granum. In a single chloroplast, there may be some 40 to 100 grams. In a single chloroplast, there may be some 40 to 100 grams. And in a cell, there may be some 10 to 100 chloroplasts per cell. These grana, You can see in the diagram, they are interlinked by membranes. These membranes which interlink the grana, they are known as lamellae. They are known as lamellae, or sometimes we also call them as stroma lamellae, or they are also known as frets. Grana are interconnected with each other by membranous structures. These membranous structures which interconnect grana with each other, they are known as stroma lamellae or they are known as frets. They are all present in a fluid-filled chamber. This fluid-filled chamber, it is known as the matrix, right? In the matrix, we also find there is the DNA of the chloroplast. A chloroplast has got its own DNA. It has got its own messenger RNA, sorry. It has got its own RNA molecule. This is RNA. And this chloroplast has got its own ribosome. These are the ribosomes in a chloroplast, right? These are the ribosomes. So a chloroplast has got its own DNA, it has got its own RNA, it has got its own ribosomes, like a mitochondria. So like mitochondria, they are also known as semi-autonomous organelles of the cell. So like mitochondria, they are also known as semi-autonomous organelles of the cell. Why they are known as semi-autonomous organelles of the cell? Semi-autonomous organelles of the cell. Because they have got their own DNA, they have got their own RNA, they have got their own ribosomes. So they can form their own proteins and they can self-replicate. So that gives them some autonomy. And we call them as semi-autonomous organelles of the cell. This chloroplast DNA, it is known as plastidial DNA. So we write it as, just a minute, I have no space on the board due to diagram. So it is written as CP DNA. This is known as chloroplast DNA. Chloroplast DNA. Or sometimes we also call it as plastome. So DNA of a chloroplast is known as chloroplast DNA, or we also call it as plastome. This DNA, it is formed of 1,20,000 to 1,70,000 base pairs. This DNA of chloroplast, it is formed of some 1,20,000 to 1,70,000 base pairs. It is formed of 1,20,000 to 1,70,000 base pairs, right? Okay, and it has got some 60 to 100 genes in it. So the DNA of chloroplasts, it is written as cpDNA, chloroplastidial DNA, right? Or we also call it as plastome. It is formed of 1,20,000 to 1,70,000 base pairs. It may contain some 60 to 100 genes in it, right? And because of this DNA, because of its own RNA, because of its own ribosomes, this chloroplast synthesizes its own proteins. It can self-replicate, and for that reason, we call it as semi-autonomous organelles of the cell, right? But the main function of chloroplast, for which they are known as kitchens of the cell, is photosynthesis. So where those photosynthetic pigments are contained, those photosynthetic pigments which are involved in photosynthesis, they are contained in these thylakoids. This time we are running out of time, so we will discuss chloroplast as a photosynthetic organelle in the next lecture. Today we only discussed its structure. In the next lecture, we will see how it is involved in photosynthesis. I think this is sufficient for today. Thank you.